Hi, I'm Sharon Calvert, and this is Eye on Tampa Bay. Today, I have Karen Jarosh with me. She's an engineer, and she's also a member of the HART board. And we're going to talk today about transportation in Hillsborough County. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen, and she's going to give us an update on what's been going on with HART. So, Karen, let's get informed and find out from the perspective of HART, what have you seen over the last few years and as a member now?
Okay, yeah. I've been on the board for the last 3 years and have thoroughly enjoyed my tenure there. I've learned a lot about the operations, and I came on just after the referendum in 2010. And so I think I'll start there with a little bit of history on where we've been, and then maybe I think we'll talk a little bit more about where it's going or where it could go in the future. So in 2010, there was a referendum to vastly expand the operations in HART. They were going after a very large rail project, which required a 1% sales tax in order to fund it. And the final vote on that referendum was 42% were for this and 58% were against. And if you look at a picture of the county and what precincts were voting for this tax increase, you pretty much see that the precincts that voted for it were concentrated within the city limits. And then most of the county, the majority of the county residents voted against the issue. So let's start there and see what was that plan in 2010 that the voters rejected. Well, back at that time, they were looking at two different alternatives, to go from downtown to the airport or to go from downtown to the USF area, which the scope kept changing on that route. They added on actually a piece going all the way up into New Tampa. So voters really weren't sure in 2010 what exactly it was going to do, and the costs were just phenomenal. If we just look at the leg that goes from downtown to USF, the cost was anywhere for capital about $1.4 to $1.5 billion. That's just to get the right of way, do the construction, order the rolling stock and all the capital fixed costs.
And that was one leg.
That was just one leg. Yes, it didn't go from downtown to the airport. And the capital costs for that, the operating and maintenance costs, so every year HART would have to come up with $20 to $22 million just to run that one system, which ran about 18 miles in length. So the referendum failed, and what has HART done since then? Well, once that failure of the referendum, they wanted to provide service for the transit dependent in that area, but had a lot lower amount of income. So what they did was they built what is termed now the Metro Rapid, which is a bus rapid system, which means that it's got more frequency. It's got a lot of the stations that would be similar to what a rail station would give you, where you can actually buy your fares at the stations. So a lot of amenities that maybe a light rail station would give you, but without the huge capital outlay. Plus you have some flexibility built in. So it took us a little bit over a year to build out something that was projected originally to cost $35 million. And what we saw in the end was a system that came under budget by about $9 million, and we were able to return that to the county.
And that's pretty amazing, because you just don't hear that today, that you come in under budget, especially on transportation projects.
Exactly. And it's been very popular. The service started in June of 2013. And it basically makes it faster to use transit in that corridor, and
it actually is a longer corridor than the original light rail corridor.
Exactly. So rather than terminating at USF, it actually extends all the way to I-75 on Fletcher. So it goes from that point all the way over to Nebraska Avenue on Fletcher, and then it heads south to the Marion Street Transit Center. So yeah, it's a very popular service, and it actually is able to meet up with cars that maybe want to get to the park and ride on 75.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's been a real success. The other thing about this bus rapid transit is that it actually uses the lanes that with traffic. So in other words, it's not maybe the very expensive form of BRT where you build an exclusive lane of highway. And in fact, we found in the 2010 plan, they did look at that as an alternative, and the capital costs were still in the hundreds and hundreds
Very
of millions
high.
of dollars to build that. So by building the scaled down version and having the bus in the shared lane with the cars, we're actually seeing a benefit to both the transit riders and the automobiles, because there is a system, a transmitter in the bus. If they're in peak traffic and there's a red light and they're running late, they can press a button, a transmitter, and the red light will turn green. So
and that's when you want to get behind the bus.
Exactly.
Get behind the bus and make that light.
Right. So it benefits both. And there's some other things. There's also a queue jump where it can actually go through a red light in the shoulder up at 56 and Fletcher. So
and I've actually heard from some folks who live not far from Nebraska. They have noticed a difference in the traffic, especially during peak times. I think because of some of that. So it's a win-win actually for whether you're driving or whether you're taking the Metro Rapid.
Yeah, very much. So again, it was under budget, and because this was actually funded with county dollars rather than federal dollars, it was able to be done without a lot of the federal strings and requirements.
Why it was under budget?
probably a good reason for that. So a really good lesson to learn. So overall, if you look, the cost of the Metro Rapid compared to the light rail it's a fraction of the capital cost. It's 1/60th. That's 1/60. So it really was a really good bang for the buck as far as spending money in transit. The ridership is doing really well, and HART is looking to possibly expand on this success. We've had a success, so normally what you do is you build on that. But yeah, just to recap it, the original light rail plan was $1.5 billion. To do their version, their expensive version of BRT, that would be $725 million in capital versus just $25 million. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a very cost-effective way to increase your ridership and expand your service.
Absolutely. So anyhow, but why are we sitting here today? There is talk very recently of reviving this rail project. We see Pinellas County doing their Green Light Pinellas program, which is a penny for a rail plan from downtown Clearwater to downtown St. Pete. So that's on the November 2014 ballot. And then, we've heard several rail projects being talked about through the MPOs. In fact, last year they had their top 10 list of projects, and 3 of those top 10 had rail components to them. And then finally, just a couple months ago, Mayor Buckhorn had his State of the City address, and he called for actually a tax referendum for rail in March of 2015.
Yeah, I think recently at one of the transportation policy leadership groups, he mentioned rail, that he was going to get it done. So we hope it's not a referendum in March, but we're predicting that a referendum may be coming.
Yeah. So HART has a 10-year plan. It's called the Transit Development Plan, or TDP, and it's something that we do every year, and every 5 years we do a major revision to it. And each year it requires a public hearing. There's a lot of public input that goes into that.
So it gets vetted.
It's definitely been vetted, and our 10-year plan has 5 more of these shared lane bus rapid transit, the more cost-effective plans in our outlook. So we're looking at up and down Highway 60 in Brandon, going along Kennedy Avenue from downtown all the way to the airport and to the Howard Franklin Bridge. There'd be one on Sheldon and Gunn Highway and Bush. One that goes all the way up and down Dale Mabry, all the way down to McDill on the south end, and all the way up to the county line up on the north end. And then finally one that would branch out from USF all the way up to Wesley Chapel at the Wiregrass Mall. So a lot of coverage.
Wow, yeah, we're 1,100 square mile county, and that, I'm looking at the map, and that is is basically doubling your current bus service.
Right, right. Now, the capital cost of that is $400 million projected, and then about $26 million a year to operate just those Metro Rapids. Also in the TDP would be plans for circulators, let's say in South County, and some other places.
Right, especially South County is growing, so if you have the additional BRTs and then you got the circulators in the geographic area, especially where some of these other parts of the county are growing today, this is it's great.
Right. So it's we're going to require more revenue if the people of Hillsborough County decide that that's what they want to build. But it certainly would be a lot less than what just that one leg of rail was. Remember, I think I told you it was 22 to 24 million.
Yep. Well,
Well, for just a little bit more, you've got routes all over the county and lots of coverage through the current TDP. So there needs to be some discussion about, is this what the people of Hillsborough County want? Do they want to fund this TDP? Unfortunately, what we're seeing again are the interests that really stand to profit off of rail, looking to push that, which I believe would crowd out this more cost-efficient and more effective plan.
And that's true. And interestingly enough, too, with the Greenlight Pinellas plan that has included a $2.5 billion rail, it only will improve their bus service 65%. So it doesn't take that amount of money to actually improve your bus service.
Right. So for the amounts that we're talking about, we're actually doubling our transit service across the county versus for a lot less, for a fraction of what they're doing to just improve it by 65%.
Right, and oftentimes, sometimes the light rail can even impede the improvement of the bus service too, down the road, somewhere at that point where it doesn't actually occur until maybe they need more revenue.
Exactly. And that's very common when these big expensive rail projects come online. Then if you hit a little bit of hard times, what the transit agencies have to do, since you've taken this money from the federal government to put in these tracks, you can't pull back on the tracks without having to repay multiple millions and millions, maybe even billions of dollars. So they cut the bus service, and then that ends up affecting the people who really need it.
That's true. We only have to look at, we have a trolley car that kind of is in that situation today that, the funds are running out. They took the federal funds and we still got it and have to make it work somehow.
Right. If we were to pull back on that, you're talking probably $55 million just to give back to the feds, and that doesn't count the cost to pull it up and everything else associated with it.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. That is so informative. We've seen, HART, what they've done since the 2010 defeat of the referendum. They've done their due diligence. They've looked at their routes from a market perspective. Where's the ridership? They put the first Metro Rapid in. It's been very, very successful, and that really was a test bed to show that you can increase your transit in a cost-effective way, improve your ridership, and do it without spending, federal funds, and without putting your fiscal position in jeopardy for the future.